and welcome to Ask an Encamper. On this show, we will go over frequently asked questions and topics that we hear from our listeners, customers, and potential customers. So today we are going to go over TRI, or Toxic Release Inventory. This is going to be a broad overview of TRI. We will dive into more depth as we get closer to July 1st, so be looking out for more webinars. So first things first, let's kind of introduce our two Encampers. We have Megan Walters and Julie Ragains. So Julie?
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Ragains and I am an environmental solutions engineer at Encamp. So what does that mean? I walk our potential customers and customers through how our software can best solve their needs and relay any information that they provide us to our product team so we can make our software even better.
Awesome. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Walters, the Director of Compliance. I'm helping our current customers stay compliant with regulations and also helping build our product and making sure that we are compliant with those regulations as well.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. So again, like I said, we're going to start with the basics of TRI. So I just want to get it kicked off with Megan. So what is TRI?
Sure. So TRI stands for Toxic Release Inventory. It's also known as Form R. It's an annual report that tracks the management of certain toxic chemicals and how much of those chemicals are being released to the environment or managed through recycling, energy recovery, and treatment.
So, Megan, why is this so important?
It's important because it's under EPCRA, which is the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. This regulation was enacted to provide more transparency between businesses who house chemicals on site and their communities that surround those businesses. EPCRA was in response to the December 4th, 1984 incident in Bhopal, India, that killed thousands of people due to the release of methyl isocyanate gas from the Union Carbide plant.
Yeah, I know we've had a few episodes before kind of TRI came about. So Julie, so what does EPA do with all this information that we get from our TRI reports?
That's a really great question. So in a broad theme, a lot of what the EPA does is use this data to track trends over time in various industries and geographic regions. So some things that the EPA tracks are increases and decreases of chemical releases from facilities over time. They like to compare releases and pollution prevention efforts of facilities in one location versus similar locations across the country. And in general, all of this helps the EPA prioritize efforts to reduce pollution from facilities. The TRI data can really help the EPA focus more on the troublesome areas than others that might not be so bad.
Okay, so let's say that I am a new EHS manager or director, and this is the first time I am doing TRI. Is this a mandatory report? Is this something I could be punished for if I don't give my inventory?
So the EPA has laid out certain criteria for exactly what facilities are required to report. So if your facility does meet that criteria and does not report, then unfortunately you can absolutely be found to be out of compliance and put into some sort of corrective action or potentially even fined.
Ooh, okay. So that makes sense. So I'm a new, EHS manager. How do I know if my facility meets the requirements for TRI?
Great question. So there's really three things that a new EHS manager is going to need to evaluate when making this determination. So number one, you must be covered in a TRI covered industry or sector. So this is determined by your facility NAAQS code. So some example industries that are subject to TRI are manufacturing, hazardous waste facilities, and mining facilities, just to name a few. Secondly, you must have at least 10 full-time employees. And finally, you must manufacture, process, or use more than a certain threshold of a TRI listed chemical per year.
Okay, so you said three requirements. So do I have to meet all three of those requirements? What if I just have two of the three? What do I do then?
So you have to meet all three of the requirements. If you do not, you do not have to report. What's interesting to me is being a former consultant and working at Encamp, we hear a lot about TRI in our industry, but it currently only affects just over 21,000 facilities in the United States. When it, in the grand scheme of things, isn't really a whole lot when you look at the massive number of facilities within the United States. So the majority of facilities actually are not subject to TRI reporting.
Oh, okay. Do we have any kind of numbers around that? Do you know how many facilities in the U.S. are meeting this requirement?
Currently, it's around like 21,600 and something, and I'm sure that number is variable year over year.
Okay. Okay. So we're not even touching, just a fraction of the total facilities we have in the United States, correct?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, so Megan, back to you. So it turns out that I'm an industry, and based on my next code, I have more than 10 employees, and now I do manufacture these chemicals. So what types of chemicals are reported?
So TRI covers over 650 chemicals and chemical groupings. It requires that you report carcinogens, persistent bioaccumulative toxic chemicals or PBTs, dioxin and dioxin-like chemicals, and environmentally toxic compounds. Examples of these are benzene, formaldehyde, lead, mercury, Agent Orange, etc.
Right. So somewhat dangerous, somewhat typical. Like I heard you mention benzene, so I know that could perk the ears up of some of the people listening today. But if I wanted to find all the thresholds for TRI, what is the best resource?
Sure. So EPA publishes a list of TRI-covered chemicals every year. Most of those chemicals on the TRI list trigger reporting if a facility manufactures or processes the chemical in excess of 25,000 pounds, or otherwise uses the chemical in excess of 10,000 pounds during the reporting year. However, some chemicals like Tier 2 and other reports can have a lower reporting threshold depending on how dangerous or toxic that chemical is.
Okay, that makes sense. And so starting now, I know I have to report. What information do I need to do to start? Like, how do I start this process?
Yeah, once you determine that your facility is applicable to the TRI reporting standard, facilities are required to submit their reports by July 1st annually. The information that needs reported consists of releases to the environment. So that means gathering and calculating data showing how much of that chemical was released through the air, water, and land. So air releases require information related to releases through fans, leaks, and evaporation through pipes and ducts. Water releases require information related to wastewater and stormwater discharges, and land releases could require information related to disposal activities like landfilling, aqueous treatment, incineration, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Megan said, I think a general good motto for how to get started and when to get started is start early and review it often. So we know you're typically an EHS manager is pretty busy in Q1 with biannual waste reporting, Tier 2, among other things. However, since TRI is so complex based on all the reasons that Megan just stated, get that data collection process likely started in March if you can. It's definitely not something that you can push off to the last minute.
Yeah, and I think Julie, you can kind of attest to this as we hear some of our potential customers and customers alike. This is something that they are not looking forward to, but kind of dreading as July 1st comes up. So just as Tier 2 is ending, you guys start really ramping up and getting prepared for TRI.
Yep, that's exactly right. We hear this all the time.
So this is just a broad overview of TRI. So I really want to just both of you kind of chime in. What makes this report so difficult?
Sure. I mean, in general, Megan laid out so many things just now that you have to keep track of. So many sources that you have to monitor, lots of calculations and data that you have to collect that is just, especially if you're in a large manufacturing facility, I can imagine is extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, I echo the same thing. The amount of data that you have to collect is usually the largest source of pain that I hear. Calculating the rate of release through your air sources can be very time consuming and difficult.
Okay, so we kind of wrapped up this conversation here. For our listeners, what is the best resource they can get further information?
The EPA does a really good job of publishing resources regarding TRI. They have their own screening tool that's free and makes it easy for facilities to determine whether or not they actually have to report. And if you're still having difficulty, they have a lot of like help desk information that you can search on their website.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. I agree with exactly what Megan said. The EPA does a really good job here. And also, if you are just curious about the area in which you live and what releases are being into the environment from a TRI standpoint, they do have a website that you can go to as well, where you enter in your zip code and you can see all the fun TRI facilities that are regulated where you live, and see what that footprint looks like as well, which is kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Megan, Julie, thank you for joining us and being on the first episode of Ask an Encamper. I'm sure we are going to continue doing this. And like I said earlier, for all our listeners, we are going to be diving more in depth as we get closer to July 1st. So just be looking out for that. All right, guys, have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon.
See ya.